Endurance Junkie Podcast, episode 98. Brought to you by Health IQ, an insurance company that helps health-conscious people get special life insurance rates. Go to healthiq.com/junkie to support the show and learn more. Hey Junkies, what's up? Thanks for joining me on a new episode of the Endurance Junkie Podcast, the show where I will be interviewing some of the fastest, smartest, and most inspiring people active in the endurance world today. Now before we get going, I would just quickly like to thank Health IQ for supporting. Many people in the endurance community seem to have had some trouble with how much that they pay for their life insurance. And despite their own health-conscious lifestyle, a lot of them get penalized for family history and BMI and stuff like that. Well, Health IQ has decided to change all that, and they will gladly offer you much sharper rates on your life insurance. So if you want to learn more and get a free quote, just head over to healthiq.com/junkie. That's healthiq.com/junkie to learn more and maybe save over $1,000 on your yearly premium. Right, originally from Texas, George Briones grew up playing soccer, basketball, football, and he ran track. Now he joined the Marines in 2007, and he was a reconnaissance Marine with deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, and he also worked as an instructor at Basic Reconnaissance Course for about 3.5 years. George left his military career to become the head coach at SOFlete HQ, where he prepares candidates for Special Forces assessment and selection. But hi George, thanks for coming on the show. Yeah, can you start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your sporting background growing up in Texas?
Yeah, that's right. First off, Pete, I want to say thank you for letting me come onto the podcast. I've been listening to you since last year and all your guests. And, we talked pre-show. I was really stoked on being able to come on and kind of share my journey and with my experiences that I'm actually enjoying now in the endurance realm and the strength realm at the same time. It's funny. I grew up as somewhat of an endurance kid. I played soccer for 12 years as a goalkeeper. All my training was a little bit more anaerobic, so more power output. At the same time, though, my coach who I was with from that time I started to when I graduated high school and ended up joining the military was really big on believing in developing aerobic capacity. And, one of those things that, a lot of athletes nowadays, they don't believe in that. Aerobic capacity is boring. Building aerobic energy systems is boring. And I luckily got that base instilled in me. My strength wasn't very good at all. I've never been a super strong kid. I was always, just that, somewhat powerful and had some of an engine that could hold it like 65, 70, 80% effort and just maintain for however long. And, I got into some trouble when I was in high school, got into some drugs and whatever else, and had a buddy of mine who dipped into the military in the Marine Corps, and he asked if I wanted to go in the buddy system. And I at that time period, I was doing really bad, had dropped out of school for my senior year, my first half, and had to really push into charter school to come back and play high school soccer. And ended up doing that, but ended up deciding, hey, I got offered a couple of scholarships to play college soccer my senior year, and I decided to walk away from them and actually go into the military because I felt that was actually the smarter route to go and get myself out of Texas. Nothing against those people, my friends and everyone back home, but it was just one of those things where I was in an environment that wasn't healthy for me anymore, and I needed to really open my mind up and go somewhere else. So I decided to dip into the Marine Corps and join the Marines back in 2007. I graduated high school in May, and I was in boot camp within 2 weeks of graduation and ready to get out there. Had a really good time during boot camp. Wasn't the best kid. I could run 3 miles in about 20 minutes, knock out 10 pull-ups and knock out 100 crunches in 2 minutes, your normal regular fitness, and never knew anything else besides that. I did learn some stuff in high school and all the other good things, but really didn't understand fitness as a whole. So, when I graduated boot camp, I went in as a communicator, which is a radio operator. So it's that guy you see with the radio in your back when you're walking through a patrol and the guy's getting shot at because he has an antenna stuck up behind him. That was what I did in the Marine Corps. And when I got through communication school, they asked who wanted to volunteer for recon school and to go to the 1st Recon Battalion. I had no idea what recon is. And if anybody doesn't know what recon or force recon is, We are that small group unit that goes out and hides in the bushes and collects intel on you, and also can, call for fire and shoot sniper rounds. And we insert at nighttime, move through the night, and make sure we're observing first, for other special operation units who come in and do hard hits. We also do that, but our main specialty is intelligence and collecting data and doing all that good stuff. So when I got to the schoolhouse and they asked me, hey, who wants to go to first recon battalion? I raised my hand, no idea what it was. Come to find out, you had to finish, you had a screener, which consisted of a 3-mile run, pull-ups, push-ups, a 500-meter swim, underwater crossover, a 30-minute tread, a rifle retrieval, and then a jump, a tower entry from like 50 feet or something like that. And I had no idea what it was. My first time in the, going to the schoolhouse, or not even to the schoolhouse, but to the unit, I was around these guys. When everyone sees the Marine Corps and everyone sees the military, everyone sees these high and tight, stud, nice, how do you say it, like classy, professional looking guys. And when I got to the unit at 1st Recon Battalion, you had guys who had long hair and had these jump and dive insignias on their chest. And I'm like, who are these guys? Like, what do they do? Like, they're walking around like their stuff don't stink. Like, it was like they were it, right? They were the hardest type A type of dudes out there. And it was a rite of passage to get to that level, right? There was traditions that you didn't do if you're a reconnaissance guy. There was traditions you didn't do, if you hadn't been at the unit for a certain time period. And it really led me into like, all right, cool, I want to go to the schoolhouse. I need to go through BRC because that's what I want to do. And I've always been that kind of person where if I'm not being challenged, I will go look to be challenged. That's something that I live by, and it's carried me through where I'm at today, with owning my own gym, to selling it, to owning my own, side company for strength conditioning athletes and tactical athletes, to now being the head of human performance for SOFlete, and really working my way up from being at the bottom and going and being where I'm at today. And I still wake up every morning like I'm at the bottom of the mountain still climbing, right? So that's kind of where I was like, all right, cool. Got my first deployment done, was with a private security detachment with Alpha Company at 1st Recon Battalion. Got back from that deployment, got sent to a Charlie Company. They're like, hey, we're going to go through some workups. We're also going to send you to BRC, which is the basic reconnaissance course. Got to go through selection, got to go through that, graduated top 5 in my class, knowledge-wise and physical. And, it was one of those things where I was not too sure if I was going to make it through the first week of the schoolhouse because I had been messed around so much with either going to selection or not going. So the week out, they said, hey, we pulled your papers. You're not going. Your buddy's going now. So I was like, all right, cool. So like every other kid, that's in the military who's had a school slot and then got it pulled from them, it's kind of like getting a purpose taken away from you a little bit, right? You kind of got to reevaluate yourself and do whatever. And I kind of, that whole week, I didn't train much at all. And I think that's kind of helped me out because when I got to the schoolhouse and they let me know 2 days prior, hey, you're checking in after all on Friday and you got to run a PFT, I hadn't worked out in a full week. And I mean, and like back then in 2008, 2009, all we knew was just grind yourself into the ground and hope you don't break. Right? That was. So I didn't know what I was doing that time period. So I pretty much did taper going into it. Ended up running one of my best PFTs, actually. It was my best PFT that I ran. At the back end when I graduated towards the last couple of weeks, I got my best pull-ups in. My runtime kind of suffered a little bit, but it wasn't really about the runtime, right? It was about how fast you can move with a ruck on your back and how well can you communicate still being under, adversity with 6 other dudes and being able to hold them accountable plus yourself accountable. And, it's what kind of really led me to my mainstay today and how my mindset is now is like, I get very emotionally attached to a lot of things, and it could be a crutch, but I don't take it as a crutch. I take it as a positive to continue moving forward and knowing like, hey, like if I'm putting myself into this, I'm going to use it for a certain type of energy and a certain type of fire to keep moving forward. And that's really kind of where I came into where I'm at now, right? Like we talked about pre-shows, I got into CrossFit. I was a decent CrossFitter, competed in a couple big competitions here in the area in California, injured myself going into my main year that I was trying to qualify for regionals, ended up messing up my knee and messing up my meniscus. And, it kind of stepped back from there. When I stepped back from there, there was some other personal problems that kind of were going on in my life at that time period. I was getting ready to get out of the Marine Corps, getting ready to have my second child, my transition out of the military. And a lot of people who don't know about the transition out of the military and the Marine Corps, or just in general, it's a very hard transition for a lot of people because we lose our purpose, right? When you're in the military, you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, you have health and dental benefits, and you have a roof over your head no matter what. If you live in the barracks or you get BAH, which is base housing allowance. along with, so all of a sudden now it's like you're either in the military for 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, or for a lifetime and you retire. What happens is the military doesn't really set you up properly to really find what the next step is when you get out. Right. It's one of those things where a lot of guys do struggle with. And it's still one of those things that I really look back at. And that's the reason why I do a lot of what I do, is because I want to help guys understand that the transition doesn't have to be that hard. Right. You can ask for help. You can find a new purpose. Again, what were we doing prior to joining the military? Right. It's like, what was your purpose for joining the military? You had some kind of purpose deeper than what it was being either Sergeant Briones or being whoever you were in the military. So that transition was a really big part of my life with my fitness career, with, CrossFitting and just in general, right. Getting out of the military, ended up getting hurt. A lot of things happened, kind of led me into my coaching career. And luckily I've been coaching since 2011. In the schoolhouse, teaching these kids to get ready for the main schoolhouse, which is BRC. They had MART, and they went to BRC. And, I had really got blessed with having guys that I could test and see what I needed to do for these guys, and then see it work as they went through the schoolhouse. And, it kind of led me into the coaching aspect of I really was very emotionally connected with athletes because I cared more than most would think, as in, I really do believe, like, if you want your athlete to be successful, you have to be much invested in it plus more, right? Like, it's something that I always say is, like, if you really want something for somebody, you have to want it just as bad or probably more than they do. Okay. Because if you're trying to have it more than they do, they'll go ahead and go in that realm. But, it's led me into, this awesome place that I am in today. And I've talked about this many times, and I've said it many times. I'm probably the healthiest now than I've ever been, training wise, doing like this hybrid style training of strength training and, endurance realm of training. Also, it's been the healthiest mentally, physically, and emotionally for me.
Okay. So you definitely made that transition back into normal life. Just going back into the military days, like, can you talk a bit about the type of training that you guys were doing there? And I think it's what they call tactical training now, tactical fitness. And can you tell a bit about the difference about tactical fitness and what we see regular fitness?
So the differences with tactical fitness and regular fitness, it's actually a lot the same. Right. We look at an athlete in, just regular everyday fitness to professional athletes. They go through some kind of GPP type training, into some kind of sport specific training, into some kind of peaking for their sport. And then it goes into off season and all that good stuff. Well, the great thing about tactical fitness is it's pretty much GPP type training from the start to the end. Okay. Yes. Will you throw in some kind of specialized training and some kind of peaking or whatever else? Yes and no, because realistically, you got guys who go through selection, and those are the timeframes where you want to really specifically program for the guys, right? When they're getting ready for selection, because they have to be good at rucking, they have to be good at land nav and moving really fast. They got to be good in the water. They got to be able to be under fatigue but still be mentally there and know what they're doing. So when a kid's getting ready for selection, yes, we want to kind of sport specific for them. But if they're way out from selection, they still haven't got a spot to selection, they may be doing a lot more GPP type stuff because it's going to make them that much better long term, right? And most kids who are trying to go into selection, they usually have to pass a PST, which consists of a 1.5 mile run plus a swim plus pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, and they get put into a lottery. And from that lottery, then they're like, okay, cool. If you have one of the fastest times, you get selected. And then after that, you have to get ready for more of a sport-specific type training, which is selection. But once you graduate selection, and one motto that we use with SOFlete is, we're not here trying to have you prove anything to us. You've already done that. You've already proved that to instructors. You're proving yourself every single day already. All we're looking to do is enhance your potential and your performance so that you're able to prove to others that, hey, look what I can do if in short term. Yeah. Right. When we look at that athlete who is training for an endurance event, or who's just training to live a healthy lifestyle, it's the same thing, right? With SOFlete and the way we approach tactical fitness, and I look at it as tactical fitness for the athlete has been evolving for years because no one doesn't really understand it. And what's great about SOFlete is everyone under SOFlete are all special operations guys who have actually worked and deployed and know what works and what doesn't. And we really understood and learned the lifestyles like, hey, it really doesn't come down to what the gym training is. It's what we're doing outside of the gym and outside of work, because of the stress that we're accumulating throughout our time in the military, especially if you're going through different workups and going through deployments and going through gunfights. Plus you have emotional stress back home because of your wife, kids, family, whatever else on top of that. And then we got to throw on training to keep you healthy. And then you're doing all that stuff. It's, for instance, we have a cup. I like to use a cup analogy. You can only fill it up so much before it starts overfilling, right? And unfortunately, a tactical athlete, his cup is a little bit more fuller than the regular athlete who gets to work from home, gets to train all day, or works a 9-to-5 job, or whatever else. Yes, they do have a stress, but this stress is a little bit different. It takes a toll on the body on a whole other level. So the way we really decided to come in with that was, all right, we got to make sure that we're helping these athletes downregulate. All right. And when I say downregulate, we talk about the central nervous system, right? When we're upregulated, it means we're in our fight or flight mentality in our central nervous system, right? It's our sympathetic state. And most human beings live in that area all the time. Okay. They don't know how to downregulate to get into the rest and recovery of their parasympathetic central nervous system. So one big thing that we have really taken with SOFlete and the SOFlete approach for training programmings for the athletes is understanding that we must, one, get you to move properly. If you have horrible movement variability, the energy expenditure you're going to have is going to go ahead and just crush you. You're not going to be able to recover fast enough. You're not going to be able to get the same volume or the intensity. Cool. If that's happening, well, then how are you also sleeping? How are you eating? How are you breathing? That's one big thing that we're really big on, right? We don't push the upregulation in our athletes because they're already at such a high sympathetic state. We want to bring them down. So we do a lot of downregulation breathing work with them in our programming, in our app, to help these guys out. We actually also have movement flow days. So I'm a big fan of Ido Portal and like animal flow type movement stuff. Like that stuff is huge because it's low taxing. It's a low aerobic movement. You can keep your heart rate below 120. And this can even go, and I even do this now, like today after I did my 50K on Saturday, today is a 30-minute blood flow, like locomotion movement day. So pretty much I'll go for 30 minutes, jump on a bike and ride at a very low pace on an air assault bike or a spin bike. And then every like 3 minutes, I'll go into my locomotion movement protocol, and do that kind of stuff, get the blood flow going so I can get ready to get back into training this week. Again, when we look at the end of the day in the tactical athlete and the athlete in general, the goal is longevity for the both of them. Right? At the end of the day, once the tactical athlete's done being a tactical athlete, he wants to go into athletic career or go to the athlete realm, that's not a tactical athlete. The goal still there is longevity. And I tell this to my high-level CrossFit athletes and weightlifters and those guys that I do individually program for. It's like, hey, guys, your progress might seem like very slow climbing, but at the end of the day, though, when you're done competing, you're still going to love to train and you're still going to love to be this person who is enjoying a healthy lifestyle. And that's something that I really look at when we look at both tactical athlete and we look at your everyday athlete, from a high performance athlete to your soccer mom athlete.
Yeah. Okay, cool stuff. So yeah, tell a bit more about SOFlete. I mean, you talk a lot about tactical athletes, but can anybody join you guys, and do you write programs for just anybody?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, is because we actually just dropped 3 new programs on the SOFlete programming. And one's a mountain hunter program. So guys who are looking to go backpack hunting with their bow or rifle. After there's those kind of guys that do that, we put a program out for that. We also have it's called our Apex program, which is a hybrid training program. And that is a program that I got to test for about 6 months. And now we're putting it out and saw nothing but great results off of it. And then we also dropped our weightlifting program. With my background, having national level weightlifting underneath me, I have some coaches who I've been able to mentor and intern who've come up underneath me and help with that. We got really good coaches on staff who help with, the mobility programming. So the program is meant for anybody. We also have a competitive fitness program, which is for our CrossFitters that are out there. Okay. We call it our competitive fitness program, and guys can jump on, and that's periodized for like the Open. And if you make the Open, then we got regionals plus the games. But a lot of that stuff this year we just dropped. But yes, any athlete can jump onto it. We also have a program called the Basic program, to where if you only have 60 minutes to train, you can get on that program and get in there and get it out and get done with very minimal equipment, your normal kind of conventional gym type training. Again, it's not your kind of training that a lot of endurance athletes are used to training. Like I said, a lot of endurance athletes are used to just kind of getting in, single leg work, which is great. I believe in it too. But they're really not doing any kind of functional fit type training, if that makes sense, right? A lot of guys do a lot of isometric stuff, or, I just need to work this one prior muscle. I need to pair this together and this together. But at the end of the day, though, it's, we're such in one single, modality, from either we're running, swimming, or biking. it's putting us in this one plane, the sagittal plane, right? Like, and realistically, we look at endurance athletes and we look at strength athletes. We put both of them together. We have a very athletic athlete.
Yeah. No, it definitely makes sense. I had one of the first couple of shows I did when I started on my second run here was with Dan Edwardes, and he was talking a lot about parkour and free running, and that definitely also can help an endurance athlete, just with flexibility and core and core strength and everything. So I think there's definitely a place maybe in a certain moment of a training career or a training plan that tactical type training can benefit an endurance athlete.
No, definitely. And it's the same thing too, when we look at strengthening joints and we look at strengthening overhead position, we look at strengthening the core and the lower back. Because I know I'm not the only person, but after I get done running ultras, my lower back is a little taxed. And a lot of guys, I'm pretty sure, know that. So that's one thing that we look at. Okay, cool. We got to build posterior chain endurance, right? We got to build strength in the joint capsule. We got to be able to build, overall strength in the muscles to be able to handle the volume intensity that everyone's doing. And at the end of the day, it's not always about just getting out there running, swimming, and biking. It's like we got to spend some time in the gym so we can see that force production and that power transfer over into what you're doing now. And like you said, there is a time and place for it. And I know like professional athletes who, have periodization for their year, someone like me. And the reason why I love the fact that I can use me is because I'm your everyday athlete. I'm not someone who's out here trying to take top first, second, or third. And like, yes, am I competitive? Yes. But I'm not trying to turn this into my profession. I have a profession already. Yep. I'm using this as something else to help keep me healthy and happy. So yes, do I want to stay strong? Yes. Do I want to be able to still move for long distance and long periods? Yes. Can they both be paired together? Yes. It's all about being smart about it. And that's something that, I've really been big on since last year in June to where I'm at today. I mean, it was funny. I was talking to my buddy about it, and he was like, what was your longest run prior to your 50K? And I was like, 2 weeks ago, I ran 20 miles. He was like, what were you doing besides? I was like, I was in the gym for an hour. I was either on the bike or I was swimming long distance or speed work. I was like, but my gym stuff mimicked what I should be getting my legs ready for my running. Yeah. Right. And then I would have one running day depending on where I was at, or I would split it up and make it happen. But at the end of the day, though, I made the transition very quick. I mean, when I signed up for my first 50 miler, I had 5 weeks to prep for it.
That's not a lot. No,
not at all. And I literally was like, all right, how do I approach this? And I was like, all right, I'm going to approach this like linear progression. I'm going to taper myself 2 weeks out, and I'm just going to go ahead and push. Luckily, I was already kind of running a little bit for about an hour to hour and a half already leading into that 5 weeks out from that. I also had a triathlon 2 weeks prior to the 50 miler. So I was doing brick sessions, plus I was doing swim sessions, plus I was doing trail running. And I don't like running the pavement. It just hurts my knees way too much from all the jumping and all the other stuff in the military. So trail running is what kind of helped with me staying, low impact, even though it's still somewhat of a high impact modality. It still kept me happy, along with the different movements in my footwork, agility, and, eye-foot coordination. It actually increased a lot of that stuff. So had a 5 week session going into it, and I think my longest run was like a 29-mile run, and that was 2 weeks prior to that, and it was actually a week after my triathlon.
Yeah. But in the end, your body was used to being up on its feet for about 12 hours, and you were mixing everything together in one day.
Yeah.
So in the end, it wasn't really a problem for you to be 12 hours on your feet.
No, and it turned out to be, I was literally training 10 hours a week. Literally, that's all I was training.
Okay.
A lot of people are like, you only train at 10 hours a week. And I was like, again, the goal is to take out the random stuff in programming that doesn't need to be there and put in what matters. And it takes a special coach to know that, right? Like if the coach doesn't really understand and he just starts throwing all this stuff into there, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, cool. Now I have all this volume stacked on me, and now I can't handle the endurance work. And all of a sudden I'm broken. And we've seen it, right? We've seen it happen plenty of times. And, my approach now is to really avoid that, to get people to understand like, hey, you can live this lifestyle of being in the gym and also being outdoors and still be able to compete and do these kinds of things. Run a 50, run a 100K, run 100 miles, run a 50K, run a half marathon. Oh, you want to go do some strength work and whatever else? Go for it. Go have fun. It's one thing that I've really realized, like it's just one of those things that a lot of people don't realize, that you can make it happen. right? Everyone's scared to kind of put everything together because like, well, I'm going to lose on this. I'm going to lose on this. Realistically, you're not. Like if you're like, I look at it this way, like my next race is 8 weeks out from my 50 miler I have. And the next 3 weeks is going to be focused on strength building.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'll run some moderate distances, maybe 10, 12-mile runs, nothing too crazy once a week. But everything else is going to be on the bike. I like to mountain bike, and I like to do my trainer a lot of the times. And what I learned there was the equivalent of 3 miles on the bike was 1 mile running.
Yeah.
So I kind of use that equation kind of on my bikes to kind of make that happen. And it's been a big part of, you know, me building my leg endurance for climbing, for running up a little bit of hills instead of really pounding it. Mm-hmm. And it's just one of those things where, like I said, I'm okay with putting in strength work for 4 weeks and then for 4 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever else, kind of being more sports specific compared to some athletes who are 8 weeks out and they're in a speed block and they go back into a base / peaking block. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not trying to peak every race. I'm just trying to, you know, one, I always use this saying is, 1, don't get hurt. 2, don't die. 3, finish and have fun.
That's a good mantra. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So
now I think a lot of people that are trying to get into the endurance sports and they want to try and run a marathon or do a 50K or a 50 miler. I think a lot of trouble that they have is to find the right information because there's so much available on the internet right now. There's so many online coaches, and you know, how do you select what's good for you?
You know, that's a funny question you asked is like, I'm actually writing my own programming now. But for the first 3 months when I made the transition, for the first 6 months when I made the transition into this kind of hybrid style lifestyle of, you know, strength work and endurance realm, I had to do a lot of, I had to find a coach who understood me. And luckily I have really good mentors and really good coaches who I've been able to work under and be under. Mm-hmm. And my coach and my mentor has known me for 30 years. Like, I could say that I'm only 30, but it seems like that's how long he's known me. He's known me for 20 years pretty much. He's seen me from the age of 12 to where I'm at now. He was my soccer coach. He was my high school athletic trainer. He's seen me go through the military. I've seen him do everything. So when we started working together, you know, it was the first time for him to kind of go into that. So both of us kind of started playing with different things. And I realized that an athlete who comes from the strength realm is not set up to go into the endurance realm right away. It takes time.
It takes time, because, I can imagine.
Because 1, skill development. 2, your body is not meant for aerobic work. Your body is in such such an anaerobic state that you have so much tension in your body, sympathetic tension in your body, that you have to lower it to find that happy medium. And most people who've gone from strength to endurance realm know when you first try to run for 10 minutes, it feels like you ran 30 miles. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh my God. So what I started doing was I started utilizing a run walk and focusing on like nasal breathing and fixing my breathing patterns and fixing my skill development of how to run properly with my gait and how to swim again. Because I've always been a decent swimmer. The bike is one of those lower skill, you know, modalities, but you still got to learn your cadence and, you know, what gears feel right for you and all that other good stuff. So I really took to the running and the biking as one if I need to really make it happen.
Yeah.
So looking for the coach that, you know, is going to be that person first. I really believe that if someone's trying to get into the endurance realm, find a coach who's going to focus on skill development and teaching you how to develop the proper aerobic capacity that you need to handle volume and intensity. You should also be adding in some kind of strength foundation if you don't have it. Again, the goal is longevity of all of this, right? Like human beings have meant to endure longer than any other predator in this on the world. Unfortunately, we are causing ourselves to not be that number one predator because we don't keep ourselves strong. So we don't get out and challenge ourselves. We don't mentally or physically challenge ourselves in that realm. So for, you know, if someone's looking for a coach, first thing I'm going to say is make sure they're giving you the proper assessment. If you can't assess an athlete and see how they move and develop a why behind your programming, you shouldn't be programming or coaching somebody. 2, make sure you're developing skills that you're going to need. 3, developing the strength foundation that you're going to utilize that's going to help support your endurance work, and then start activating, increasing that aerobic work. And all 4 of those can be worked at the same time. And a lot of people don't understand that. It's really simple. Right? Especially a new endurance athlete, you know, they don't need to be out on the road 5 days a week. They don't need to be in the gym 5 days a week. You have 7 days in a week and they work 5 out of those 7, probably from 8 to 5. They only have a couple hours in the day to train. So why not split like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday could be their gym strength foundation. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays are more endurance based. And if I grab it, when I start getting endurance athletes, and that's funny is I actually talked to a couple of endurance athletes who are getting ready for their first 50 miler or 50K. And, the first thing I tell them is really build a strength foundation along with building the proper skills that you're going to need, and not just build your skills in biking, running, or swimming, build them in all three modalities, because they're all going to be crossover to each other so that you're able to train. For instance, I like to use the pull for an example because I love the pull for my low CNS days. So I use the high-low method from Charlie Francis of how to program your days for what's coming up. And my low days consist of a lot of pull sessions. And the reason for that is because it's low impact. Yeah. And I get to cater how much effort I'm putting out during that swim. Right? If it says, hey, you're doing 5 by 1,000 meter freestyles at 85, 90% effort, and I go in there, I don't feel like doing 85, 90% effort, my 85 to 90% effort for the day might be 65, 70%. Am I still getting work in? Yes. Mm-hmm. And if I'm training at 65, 70% effort, I'm building cardiac hypertrophy. I'm increasing the strength of my heart, right, to be ready to power and everything else like that. So there's nothing wrong with that. My joints don't hurt. It's a recovery day. I look at it like that. Okay, cool. Well, after my swim day, what's the next day? Let's get after it on the road. Let's start into the trails. Let's get a good solid run day in. It's kind of how I look at it as, right, if we're getting deep into it. But going back to that question, if we're looking for a coach, dude, and those athletes are looking for it, assessment, make sure you have the proper assessments, make sure you're getting the proper skill development, make sure you're utilizing the proper strength foundations, and learning all modalities. If you're not learning all modalities, you're done.
Yeah, okay. What about nutrition? Because that's nutrition, a different switch coming from strength to endurance.
And that's funny you say that. Is actually I've been playing around a lot with it. I used to weigh 217 pounds back in last year in June. I weigh now 187 pounds, and I've lost that's almost 25, almost 30 pounds in almost going in 8 months. And it's funny, we talk about that, and your podcast have been a big help in kind of learning my nutrition on what I should be doing for endurance days and what I should be doing for strength days. Okay. Cool. So what I've been doing, and it's actually been working really well, is on my endurance days, I will go ahead and do higher fat days with moderate carbohydrates. Right? Proteins stay the same across the board, body weight protein. And then on my strength days, where I have strength days sometimes paired with some aerobic day work, with aerobic or power speed work, whatever else, I'll go higher carbohydrates because I need the glycogen for it. So realistically, all I'm really doing is this carb cycling type thing. Yeah. And my body has seen nothing but great results from it. And I've been really lucky and blessed that I haven't had no problems on runs. And I'm smart about my approaches. I do when I get into an ultra, my past two that I've done, I've been really smart on how I approach my diet. I try and keep the carbohydrates a little lower, my fats a little higher. So, like we talked about, like that Nico method of using fat as energy that I listened to on that last podcast. Yep. It makes a lot of sense, right? It's like you need to be able to burn fat to sustain energy long term, but you also need the carbohydrates to help with lactic buffering and glycogen restores and all that great stuff. So why not blend them both in? I'm nothing against keto, nothing against paleo, nothing against all that stuff. Those are just lifestyle type diets and ways of eating if you're not training fully, right? I had a buddy who did the carnivore diet and had no refined sugars at all inside his diet at all. It was pretty much plant-based and just meat. And he saw nothing but great results off of it. And he was like, I wasn't doing nothing that was using any kind of carbohydrate stores. I was using everything that was fat or protein. And one thing he talked about that in general was the problem with keto right now, people are not putting enough protein in. They're lacking the input of protein, which helps keep hormone levels up. Okay. So it kind of made me like, okay, cool. So I've been playing around with that too. So when I have higher fat days, I increase protein. Yeah. And coming from the special operations realm in the military, my test levels have always been super low. And, I go by these I call them the 3 H's, right? Happy, hungry, and horny if I wake up in the morning. And it's funny, right? I have 3 check marks that I use on myself and my athletes, and people laugh at me about it, but it's true. Like, those are 3 things that I can adjust and I can cater off of, let me know. Right? If I'm hungry, I know my digestive system's working properly. If I'm in a good mood, mentally I'm there, right? If I wake up with a morning, heart on, like my hormones are doing great. Yeah. So if I'm missing one of those things, I got to figure out what's going on.
Okay.
And since I've gone with this new kind of diet with, carb cycling, increasing fats and proteins on higher fat days, lowering my proteins, increasing carbohydrates, and moderating my fats back down, I've seen really good things with myself with that. Again, is it a diet that I think everyone should do? No, I really believe someone should find what works for them. So that goes back to the coaching aspect. When I sit down with my athletes, I sit down with an assessment. We talk about nutrition. We talk about what we need to do. I look at their backing of what they did for their training age, full on like 60-minute conversation of what their life is, how they're eating, and everything else like that. If we got to reset gut health, we reset gut health. If we need to reset how to breathe, we need to learn how to sleep better and all other good stuff. I do stuff like, for instance, right now I'm doing the study with the R90 sleeping patterns from Dr. Nick Littlehaines.
Yep.
So I heard him on your podcast.
Okay. Yeah, I had him on a couple of months ago, yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I got it from. Okay. Because it got me into, we're talking about like sleep, nutrition, and training. Mm-hmm. It got me into understanding like, okay, cool. Why are we not getting into the realm of sleep that we're supposed to? And Dr. Littlehaines hits it on the head. He does, right? Like,
yeah, he does.
He does, and I don't got to go over all that stuff. People, listen to it already, but it's one of those things where I'm really, all right, hey, like this is how we fix sleep. And this is what we need to be doing. We need to have pre-bed routines and we need to have post-bed wake-ups, like post-routine wake-ups. Like it's going to set you up for the day. Same thing with caffeine, right? We look at caffeine. A lot of people like to put caffeine first thing in the morning. I mean, how many times have you woken up in the morning and put caffeine right away?
I don't drink coffee, so.
Oh, well, that's even better, right? That's good for you. But a lot of people wake up and the first thing they want to do right away when they wake up is go start that coffee maker.
Yeah.
They don't put no water in. They don't put no food in. They don't do anything. Well, your body's been asleep for, let's say, 6 to 8 hours. You're now in the starvation mode. And the first thing you want to go do is put caffeine and spike cortisol levels and spike your central nervous system. And now you're not going to be able to recover, in which you see crashes throughout the day. So we really talk about that, right? Like, hey, how to approach your eating in the morning and all that good stuff. Yeah. So those are like, if you want to break it down to 5 things when we look at a coach, assessment, make sure their sleep and nutrition is good, make sure movement and mobility is good, make sure we're understanding skill development and having a very good strength base behind all of that as one, and bringing them as a whole. Okay.
A lot of stuff to talk about, and I think we can definitely fill another couple of podcasts with this material. But for now, how can people get in touch with you if they want to?
So if they want to get a hold of me, they can find me on Instagram at SOFlete_GB3. And they can just hit me up on there. If they want to get a hold of me via email, they can go ahead and get me at george@SOFlete.com. And that's pretty much how they can reach and get a hold of me. I'm pretty much answering my emails all the time. I'm on my phone and my computer pretty much 24/7, never, unless I'm out training, doing something.
Okay, cool stuff. I'll put those links up on the show notes page. You talked about that you're going to be doing some more ultras in 2018. So you got some sponsors and partners there that help you out?
Yeah. So one thing I've learned about this endurance realm is it's very expensive.
Yep.
And sometimes I can't. It's one of those things where I got to ask for help, but at the same time, I kind of utilize it as a pain for a purpose type thing and help run for charities and put someone else behind me. So I got, I'm running for the Recon Sniper Foundation. We're called Team RSF. And then I'm kind of starting to join with the guys called Marine_Ultra Runners. And those guys are out from the East Coast and they're all about the Semper Fi Fund. And that's kind of what we're doing. Then I also help raise money for a charity called Project Motive by my buddy Rick Alexander, and he got to the last one we ran for our 50-mile race, and he did some other stuff. We raised over, I think we ended up getting like over 150 plus bikes for kids for Christmas.
That's an awesome project.
Yeah, dude. So that's kind of the projects we're gonna be utilizing. So for the runs I got this year, my next race is Old Goat 50 miler, which that's gonna be a lot of fun. And this year is more dedicated to climbing hills, and I'm trying to become a mountain goat is what I want to become. Okay. A lot of these guys out there, I'm just blown away by the talent that some of these guys have of just running up hills and not stopping. I'm just like, dude, that's impressive. Like. And we understand it takes time and it takes patience. So that's something that I am doing. But my big race this year, I have 2 big races, one ultra and one tri. And the 100-mile Kodiak race in Big Bear is my A race. And that'll be my first 100-miler ever. Yep. And I'm looking forward to that. And then 12 weeks later, I have 3 back-to-back Ironmans. And they're not full-on sanctioned Ironmans. The runs kind of decrease as the 3rd day comes around. But it's called the Extreme Triad in Florida. And you swim from the Atlantic Ocean, and then you do a bike to the other side of the Gulf. you run and do that back and forth. So looking forward to that. But those are my current sponsors right now that I have. I don't really have many others except for SOFlete. SOFlete sponsors me, obviously, right? But realistically, sponsor wise, I've been there, I've done that when I was competing in weightlifting and CrossFit, and it's one of those things, man. Is like, I'm not gonna lie to you, sponsors are great and I'd love to have them, but at the same time, I feel like it puts a little more extra pressure on people, and I'm that kind of guy who I don't like to have expectations for things. I like to go out there and just be the unknowing and be ready for whatever comes my way. And that's it. But if, someone wanted to sponsor me, it would be awesome at the end of the day to help with some kind of entry fees at the
yeah, they can definitely be expensive, especially those longer distance races. Anything else you want to plug?
No, I want to say thank you though, dude, for letting me come onto the show and share a little bit of my journey with you guys.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for coming on. One final to finish it off. If you could sit on a bench somewhere and chat for an hour with anyone from the past or the present, who would it be?
That's a deep question, man. It's funny, I actually opened up more on this podcast than I have ever about kind of my past. So the next one's going to be my grandmother. My grandmother was my rock. She was my everything. After my dad, I had a pretty hard stint for 5 years where I lost my dad, deployment, my great grandmother, and then my grandfather, my best friend, and my grandma passed away. Was like how it happened in 5 years. And, my grandfather passed away. My grandma lived for about a year, but I didn't really talk to her much. She would call me and I would be busy doing something. And this is what got me really deep into my training. And I kind of put everything away to the side and was trying to focus on something else. And I forgot what life was about and how precious life and how short it can be. And I ended up surprising my grandmother coming home 1 year, and a year after my grandfather passed away. And 2 days later, she's in the hospital passing away, and hadn't seen her in a full year, talked to her maybe 3 times that whole year. And, if I can go back and sit there on that bench and just talk to her for hours and just ask her if I'm going in the right place, I'm doing the right things, would be huge for me. That's something that would be super meaningful for me for sure.
Okay, well, hope that happens. Thanks for the time, George. Much appreciated.
I appreciate it, man.
All right, Junkies, thanks for listening to this episode with George Briones. Now, if you like these little interviews and don't want to miss any future ones, just head over to iTunes or Stitcher and simply subscribe to the show. I would also like to thank everyone who has also left a rating and a review there. That's much appreciated. And if you haven't done so yet, please consider leaving me one and help grow the show even more. Alright, the show is also available on Spotify, so if that's your preferred medium, you can always search for Endurance Junkie Podcast in the search bar there, and you will find us no problem. Alright, thanks again for listening, and I hope you'll join me next time. Cheers, guys.